Hi, welcome to the Joe and Mel Show. I'm Joe.
I'm Melissa.
And this is a podcast where we discuss life, marriage, and parenting from a Christian perspective. And we have a special surprise. Actually, Melissa, I didn't tell you this, but I have a surprise for you.
Ooh, what's the surprise?
Well, we're going to start with something new. You know what these are, but I didn't tell you that we're doing this. These are our conversation starter cards.
Oh.
So I thought we'd start off by answering one of these questions. I have not picked one of these out. And obviously, we'll give the radio-friendly version answer. Some of these may not be, but these are conversation starters that we got at a marriage seminar recently. And okay, here we go. We'll both answer it. Okay, describe your idea of a perfect vacation for the two of us. Where would we go, and what would we do together?
A perfect vacation?
Yeah, just the two of us.
Just the two of us. That alone just sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah. Say no more. The answer's in the question.
I mean, you know, we love being outdoors, and we love just hiking. I mean, that's what we did on our honeymoon. So I would say probably a perfect vacation would be going to like Colorado and just enjoying the sights and visiting little coffee shops and just little restaurants and stuff like that. It would just be fun and just, I don't know, going exploring and just enjoying nature and the beautiful weather. Nice.
I'd probably say the same thing. Maybe choose someplace other than Colorado, because sounds like the question says the perfect vacation, so we can go anywhere. Maybe go to a nation like Israel or something and just be tourists for a while.
Yeah, that was going to be my second choice. Yeah.
You know, we live in a tourist town, so we often have a negative view of tourism. But I like being a tourist sometimes. I like exploring new places, visiting local shops, visiting local restaurants and things. And you're right, it's what we did in our honeymoon. I think it was a lot of fun. And so we'll do that. We'll do that soon. Don't worry. It's going to happen. Well, in this episode, we want to talk about the fruit of the Spirit, and specifically how to apply the fruit of the Spirit in our family life, in our home. And one of the reasons we want to talk about this is we hear a lot of great sermons at church. We hear a lot of great, we get a lot of great devotionals that you can read. And it's sometimes easier to apply what you're learning about your spiritual life to those you don't share a home with.
That's definitely true.
And so what we want to do is reemphasize the fact that God wants you to be a Christian at home and practice the same things at home that you would expect a Christian to act like outside the home. And the 9 fruit of the Spirit are great examples, great, I think of like compass markers, like the directions that we need to be going in. We need to be thinking, is what I'm about to do loving? Is it kind? Is it patient? How is you can sort of use it as a self-checklist. How has my blank been, right? How has my joy been in the home lately? Do my kids see me practicing these fruit of the Spirit? So we're going to go pretty rapid fire through all 9 of them and just share both of us ideas that we have about how we can apply these things to our life from our own experiences and from what we've seen other people, some other good role models that we've seen in our lives. So I'm going to go ahead and read the verse. The fruit of the Spirit are found in Galatians 5, verse 22 and 23. And really the whole chapter is great. It talks about the fruit of the flesh. People who live in the flesh will produce these things. People who live in the Spirit will produce these things. So we want to obviously be in this realm. The verses say, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law." So our first one is love. Mel, how would you recommend we exercise love in the home?
Well, anytime I think of love, I just always think of 1 Corinthians 13, 4 through 8, and especially in the Amplified version, I really like. I mean, that's how my parents had me memorize. So that's just always the translation that comes to mind. But I just think about everything that love is. It's something that you have to, not that you have to, that you get to express to your kids, that they need, that they desire, and that they crave, and that they need to see in action. And sometimes it's hard when you're home with them all the time, but some ways to show love to our kids is, you know, I think it's showing them how important they are. So especially for me, I have a list of things that I want to get done in the home. And so, our kids will come up and ask me to do this or ask me to do that, or Naomi will say, Mom, will you just read a book with me?
Right.
And so I'll say, Mom, would you look at this? Would you look at the drawing that I made? And Israel will come up and, tap me on the leg. Mom, outside.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's just, for me, love is just allowing myself to stop and enjoy my kids, even just for a few minutes, and letting them have that one-on-one time with me. I think that, at least for our kids, that really shows love to them.
Absolutely. That's fantastic. The only thing I'll add is, when I think of love, I also think of the romantic type of love. And as a married couple, we should be expressing love to each other where, our kids know that our relationship is solid. I should be saying I love my wife. I should be speaking to her with grace and with, letting my kids know like I am in love with their mom. And I think that's a really important aspect of the family, is to knowing that, hey, the bedrock of our relationship, of our family, is mom and dad and their relationship. And if the kids know that relationship is good and that we're tight, that we're communicating, that we're friendly and loving towards one another, I think it goes a long way in strengthening their security in our home and knowing that we're good.
Yeah, for sure. You can definitely see how much it affects them when we're being loving towards each other. I mean, they notice every single thing that we do. So yeah. I think it definitely makes them more secure when they see us loving each other. Absolutely.
Let's go to number 2, joy. I'll start this time. I think joy should be a part of every Christian home, because really we have eternal hope. We have no reason not to be joyful. Just think about everything that Christ endured for us. Think about all of the truth that we have access to through the Word of God, and all of the love that we can receive from God and from Jesus. Even when things are tight, maybe like money's tight, maybe tensions are high, we got to remember that joy brings strength. Joy brings renewing. And sometimes that might look like watching a funny movie together. It might look like telling stupid jokes with your kids. If you have a young elementary kid age person in your home, they love telling silly jokes that you may not think are funny. But let them tell those jokes. Let them have that joy. And as parents, we have a responsibility to be the role models in that. We should be willing to laugh and giggle and have fun with our kids. And that's going to be contagious. And the kids will feel like home is a fun place to be. So it's important to find ways to have fun together as a family, to find things that are silly, to be silly. I know sometimes we put on loud music in our house. We just have dance parties, and the kids love that. They love being goofy, and we poke fun at each other, and we get each other to do awkward, silly things. But it brings a smile to everyone's face. And I think that's really important. As we're laughing, it's producing, positive chemicals in our brains and our bodies, and it's just reinforcing the fact that we love being around each other. And sometimes, like it says in James, you've got to count it joy. You've got to decide to choose joy in the midst of situations that may not be very fun. And again, that's a great thing for your kids to see if things aren't going well, to say, hey, I don't feel like it, but we're going to do something fun tonight. We're going to make it a choice to be joyful.
Yeah, and a lot of times, when I'm with the kids and things are just maybe not going well for the day, we're just maybe behind on schoolwork, or the house is like so messy and it just bothers me. Sometimes I like to just, when I realize that things are just becoming not joyful, I just take a moment and pause and say, okay, guys, let's pray. Let's, change our attitudes. Let's really work on turning this around and finding that joy again, bringing that back up. And let's choose for the rest of the day to have a good day.
Absolutely.
And by redirecting, I think a lot of times that saves more conflict and just things that come up between us.
Yeah, and I think as a parent, we need to recognize that we're the role models and we set the tone. And oftentimes, the behaviors or the attitudes we're seeing in our children are sometimes reflections of how we're treating them. If we're having a bad day, everyone's having a bad day, So we need to be careful how we respond to things. And even if you don't feel like, even if you got to put some faith into action and choose joy, that's something that's going to make your family life and your family dynamic so much more enjoyable. So tell us about peace, Mel.
Peace. That is definitely something you need in your home, especially when you have young kids, because things can get pretty crazy real quick when there's a fight going on. That's something that, just in our life, we've been going through with our youngest two. They just want the same toy. They fight over that toy. Screaming starts. It's just, I have to choose in that moment. Am I going to be a peacemaker? Am I going to see this as an opportunity to help my kids learn how to walk in peace? Because I can, just like you were saying earlier, I can change the tone. I can change the mood by the way I'm acting. And so I try to remember, I have to be honest, it's not always 100%, but I have to try and remember I'm the peacemaker. I can help this situation. And a lot of times just by talking peacefully with them, talking quietly, in the word, it says a soft answer turns away wrath. Yep. Sometimes I have to lay the law down a little bit and get, break up the fight. But, I think having that mindset that this is an opportunity for me to help my kids experience peace helps keep my mind straight and my attitude correct.
Absolutely. I think also redirecting, one of the strategies I've seen you use and give counsel to our children is to just redirect the attention away from what the conflict is. I don't mean push away your problems, but if there's a toy that you're fighting with, both those kids need to realize there's a lot of other great things that can be being done at that moment. There's a lot of other great toys they can be playing with. We sometimes, I say we like children, we as children, sometimes we act like children. Sometimes children focus so much on one thing that they turn blind to everything else, and they forget the fact that they live in a great house with all sorts of fun stuff, and that they love their brother. Right now they're frustrated with him, and there may be some other issues going on. And I think you do a great job, especially of saying, hey, maybe you're hungry, right? Like, hey, maybe
you need a snack.
Maybe you just need a snack. Maybe that's why you're frustrated with your brother. Not because he did anything wrong, but you just need a snack. And pursuing peace and being, modeling that as well. If you're constantly uptight and you're constantly flustered and frustrated, again, it's going to set a tone for your children to follow. And don't be surprised if they start taking it out on each other because they see that modeled by the parent. That's something that we need to be very cautious of. And also with our marriage, you want to make sure that your marriage is pursuing peace, that you're at peace with one another,
right?
That you make things right. Don't let anger fester. Don't let bitterness creep into your heart to where you're offended and you're bitter, because that's going to sour the whole mood and everyone's going to feel it.
For sure.
All right, next up is patience. And I think this is definitely something that is easier to practice with people you don't live with. It's easier to be patient with. Oh,
yeah, definitely.
It's easier to be patient with your coworkers. It's easier to be patient with out-of-town relatives. It's easier to be patient with the strangers at Walmart than it is with your own kids and with your own spouse. And so we got to be careful to not allow familiarity to come in, creep in, and for us to lie to ourselves and say, you know what, I just had it with this person. I'm just going to, the moment they slip up, I'm going to jump down their throats, or I'm going to let them know that this is the last straw. I've been keeping score all week and you made me mad too many times. That's not what patience is. What is patience? Patience is modeled by Jesus, by the fact that his disciples let him down over and over again, and he still came back and he still taught him. He still loved him. He still, Peter, for instance, denied him 3 times. He still coached him through it. Jesus was there for those who tried his patience to the nth degree, and we need to make sure that we're modeling patience at home and not expect a pass because these are the people that we're around all the time. Now, it takes a lot more intention, it takes a lot more practice, perhaps. I mean, it is true that you do remember what they did last night. You remember how they behaved yesterday. So when they're
how they've been all week,
keeping that cycle in again and again, it can be very trying. But what a great place to learn patience in the home. Imagine how blessed our children will be if they see patience modeled for them by their parents, if they see it in action. And I'm thinking just practically, like, especially if you have young kids like we do, they're going to ask you for something over and over and over again. It just take time to go with it, to go,
Right.
if you have a child that takes a long time to tell you something, sometimes kids beat around the bush, or it takes them 30 seconds to say what you would say in 3 seconds. Be patient with them. Understand they're growing, they're developing. And what you don't want to do is shut them down to where they don't feel like you care enough to even listen. So then,
Right.
that would be the tragic part of not being patient. I believe the cost of not being patient when your child is young is they'll just stop coming to you, period.
Yeah.
They'll realize, Mom and Dad don't have time
really
for me,
true.
so I'm going to go find someone else to listen to me. Or I'm going to go find someone else to confide in. And you gotta protect that relationship and really sow good seeds when they're young so that they continue coming back to you and seeking advice from you.
Yeah, and really, with all of these that we share, I'm always reminded that sometimes we won't get it right. I mean, that's for everybody. And if you do mess up, if you do make a mistake or you're not patient with your child, apologize. I've had to do that a lot with our kids.
That's good.
And I just say, hey, I didn't react in the right way, and I am so sorry. I wasn't being patient, or I wasn't being loving towards you, and that wasn't right for me to do that. Will you forgive me? And I always say yes. They always say yes, and but it really changes just the atmosphere when you humbly ask your children for forgiveness, because it also teaches them, like, even when you're an adult, sometimes it's hard to practice all of these things, and we're never going to be perfect, but we need to keep trying our very best.
Yep. And I love that patience. When we're not patient, asking for forgiveness and being open and honest and just say, hey, I was frustrated. I was not,
Right.
I was not practicing patience, because then they get to see, oh, this is what I should do when I'm frustrated as well. This is what I should do when I blow it. I should ask for forgiveness. And, again, just setting great role models, setting great examples for our children to follow. And also for our spouse. We want to make sure that we're being patient with our spouse, not taking them for granted, but always remember, how do I like to be treated? Do I like to be reminded
True.
of all my faults? Do I like to, if it takes me a little bit longer to do something, do I like it when people are breathing out of my neck and asking passive aggressive questions? Do I like it no, we like when people practice patience towards us. And so we need to remember that our spouse is a human who has the same types of feelings that we do. We want to make sure that we're elevating them and really being the patient person we would be as if their father, God, was standing right next to us.
Mm-hmm.
How would we treat them in view of their father? How would I treat my wife if her dad was right there next to me, listening to how I talked to her? You'd be patient, right?
Yeah,
You wouldn't,
you would.
You wouldn't jump and be expecting things to go faster or expect people to be perfect when we know they're not going to be. Okay, next is kindness. Mel, do you want to start that one?
Kindness in the home. Modeling kindness, I feel like it just kind of goes with all of the virtues,
Mm-hmm.
all of the fruits of the Spirit. But being kind, a lot of times with our own kids, I hear, especially from our oldest, sometimes he'll joke around with his sister or just say things that are maybe borderline, making fun of, or just teasing, or just maybe not choosing the kindest words. I feel like a lot of times for us, it's mostly with words.
Yeah.
Being kind. And I tell him that. I said, hey, listen, say that again and ask yourself, is that the right way to be speaking to my sister? Is that the way to be speaking to my brother? They don't understand maybe quite everything that I do. Speaking about Silas, and I say, you have to remember, like, even though they're younger than you, maybe you know more than they do, that doesn't give you an excuse to say mean things that would, it might not hurt their feelings because they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
But let's use kind words, especially with each other. And I say, I know you're not trying to be mean, because Silas is a very tender-hearted, very sensitive guy. But just, not being afraid and just talking through them, like having really open conversations with them about, like, hey, that wasn't maybe the right choice of words. What can we do next time? And how can we use our words to show love, to show kindness, instead of being negative?
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to take it from a different perspective. I think I can learn a lot from our kids in that they are very kind to us, and especially our daughter. She'll come home, or I'll come home, and she'll have made me a card, or she drew me a picture. Today she painted all these paintings, and she's like, look what I made for you. And she's very, very generous and very kind to give things out. And it reminds me that sometimes just giving small gifts or giving small bits of attention specifically towards one child and showing kindness to them, that's a gift for them to know that,
right.
I'm going to take time as a parent to be kind to you, not wait for a birthday, not wait for someone else to initiate it, but just say, I'm going to get them something, or I'm going to express my love for them in a kind gesture and compliment them or something like that. I think that goes a long ways in developing that relationship between the parent and the child. Again, building trust. It's showing that, hey, I know you're going to take care of my physical needs. I know I expect meals. I expect a home that's warm in the winter and cool in the summer. But you surprise me with this thing, and it really shows that can be done. Like, that's normal. You want to make being kind and doing kind things a normal thing in your family. So why not just go out of the way and say, we're going to get this for this person, or I'm going to take you and do something fun with you just for the fun of it. And showing kindness in that way can really model for them how to be kind in the world and how to be kind towards each other. And we can't forget, again, it's easier to be kind to people who aren't in your home, but we need to remember God wants us to be kind in our home, to our children, to our spouse. And I think by doing special things for them is just another way of expressing God's love for them through you.
Definitely, I agree.
Okay, next up is goodness. And I looked this up in a couple different translations because goodness can sometimes be confused with kindness. But when you look at other translations, I believe it's talking about you being virtuous and having good character. I kind of think of it like that. Because kindness is like how I'm treating you. Goodness is just who I am and how I'm acting, or what my virtue is. And so I think goodness comes through in our character and building up our character. I think one way we can model this and grow in this in our home is just to grow as a Christian, to be reading your Bible, to be exercising in the spiritual things that we need to be doing on a regular basis. In other words, letting our children see us pray, letting our children, taking our children with us to church and showing them how to worship, showing them that we as a family believe in the Lord and that we don't talk like the world, we don't lie, we don't cuss, we don't allow certain things in our home that are going to offend Christ. And that's a way of showing goodness towards them, is by being a model of a virtuous person and taking that time to develop ourselves spiritually so that they can look at us as a spiritual role model and not just, someone who says we're Christian or we live in a Christian home. We really want to model it for them by being good ourselves, by being virtuous ourselves. And that, I think, again, children will emulate what they see. So if they see someone who's godly in the home, is going to show them this is how we ought to live. And you definitely don't want to be caught being a hypocrite and being one way somewhere else and then coming home and acting a different way. I know I've heard far too many stories of people who had parents like that, where everything was fine on Sunday at church, but when they got home, oh boy, it was World War III. So we want to make sure that we're exercising that spiritual discipline of growing spiritually, growing into the Lord, growing our character. And it's okay to tell your kids, like, hey, I'm reading this book because I want to learn how to be this or that, right? I have a book on forgiveness up on the shelf. I was reading that a while ago, and someone asked me, or one of my kids said, what are you reading? I said, well, it's a book on forgiveness. I don't necessarily think I'm holding on forgiveness towards anyone, but I want to learn from people who know something about forgiveness because I want to grow spiritually. I want to grow my character. And I think that's what modeling goodness might be. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree when you're saying about our kids need to see us at home modeling all of the fruits of the Spirit. because, you know, I know our kids are learning about this at church, and where are they going to practice, you know, the fruits of the Spirit? At home. They need to see it in action. They need to see us developing our character at home. And if they don't see that, they're not going to know how to do that for themselves, or they're going to learn the wrong way maybe and say like, yeah, this is the way we act at church. Just like you said, this is the way we act at church, but at home, anything goes. Mom and dad don't care about any, you know, about loving each other, being kind, or, you know, being the same person they are at church. And I definitely think it's important as parents to show our kids that we're really doing our best, that we are trying to develop our character. That's a class that we took in the internship, character development, and it was so good. And you know, our kids, you know, what are they seeing in us? What are they seeing us do? And it's kind of like we are that living example for them.
Yeah.
I mean, they may never see Jesus like on this earth, but they'll see him in us if we choose to be more like him.
Yep. And we should never be, you know, we should live our lives unashamed. And, you know, as weird as that may sound, we should be willing to be spiritually vulnerable in our homes. And, you know, your children are different ages. Obviously, we all have different age children. You can share certain things with some children that others may not be old enough to hear. But we want to be vulnerable and open for them to see, okay, what is it like for a mature Christian to learn something? What does it mean, you know, when you're corrected by the Word of God? What does that look like? How do you respond to that? And as parents, we have an opportunity to show them that, and to, you know, show them that we are developing our character as well. We don't expect just our children to grow. Yes, they should grow physically, mentally, spiritually, academically, but we're also growing as well. And I think that would really give them another avenue to relate to us and say, oh, my parents are growing too. You know, they're trying to be better, trying to be more closer to Jesus's character. And that's something that they could grab a hold of and hopefully follow you along with that the rest of their life.
Yeah. And really like a practical way to do that. You mentioned, you know, one of our kids asked you what you were reading. I really love when, especially when we're doing styles of schoolwork and we're reading Bible stories, it's so fun to ask him questions, and a lot of times he'll ask me questions. So just reading the Bible together, even if it's a children's story Bible, and talking about it with each other. Yeah, it opens doors. And then you can turn that around and apply it to life. Like when, you know, if you're reading about David and Goliath and you talk about how, you know, why wasn't David afraid? You know, why was he able to face that giant? And then you talk, you know, that just, like I said, it opens doors to other conversations, and you can talk about maybe a time where you faced fear, but knowing that God was with you helped you to overcome that.
That's good. All right. 3 more to go. Let's talk about faithfulness. I started last time. Why don't you start this time?
Faithfulness. I immediately think about church, and I think about serving, because especially for us, a lot of our schedule revolves around being in church and going to the events. And there's a lot of things, a lot of areas of ministry that we're involved in that require us to come early, to stay late, to do extra things. And I think, you know, there's times where I've wondered, how is this affecting our kids, you know? But then I hear them throughout the week talking about church, talking about the different ministries that they know that we're involved in, and even them getting excited, knowing that one day, you know, that it could be a possibility that they would be involved in the same ministries. So I think them seeing us be faithful to church, faithful to each other, faithful to our families, I think that's powerful. Yeah,
I agree. I think that anytime you can stick with something, it gives your kids, again, another model. I feel like I'm repeating myself for all 9 of these, but we want to model these for our children. And so what better way to model faithfulness than in your marriage and also in your faithfulness to the house of God and serving God. Even if if you're a tither, talk about it. Talk about how we're faithful to give our tithe. I feel like sometimes our kids, especially Silas, may ask us, why are we doing this? Why do we go early every day? Or why do we do something like that? And it's a good opportunity to say, like, well, we're faithful. We committed to doing this, so we're going to follow through with it. We're not going to flake out. And I teach at my school. I teach so many kids who have parents who are not faithfully there for them, either because of divorce or because of family issues. You can sense just a little bit of sadness in their voice when they say, "Oh, well, I'm doing this, or I'm staying with my dad this weekend because of this or that, or my grandparents are raising me because of this or that," and it really hurts kids at a high school level. You can tell just by talking to them, like, hey, they just don't have a bunch of peace and a bunch of great role models for them at home when there's not faithfulness in the home. So that's sort of the bedrock, I think, is just being faithful to your family, putting them as a high priority as well. Saying no to things as an individual for the sake of your family. Being willing to say, no, I don't want to go on that trip because I want to spend time with my kids, or I'm going to take extra time and just spend time with my family. That means a lot to them, and it shows that you're faithful to the family, not just to be there and provide for them, but to enjoy time with them and spend time with them as a father or a mother.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is gentleness. Obviously, if you have young children, being gentle is super important. You want to make sure that they feel safe and loved around you, but also physically. But think about how we use our words. Are our words gentle? Would you describe your words as being gentle to them? You mentioned already that a soft answer turns away wrath. A lot of times gentleness brings peace, brings these other fruits of the Spirit to the table because it's setting the tone for them. And we want to make sure that when we're responding, especially if someone asks you something, or, our children are very needy perhaps, you want to respond with a gentle answer that says, I hear you, I'm not mad at you. Yes, I said this 16 times already, but I'm going to maintain my dignity and not stoop to your level. Yeah, I'm not going to lose my cool. But being gentle, I think of the way I respond verbally to my kids. What do you think of when you think of gentleness?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, I know for me, I have to remember that my kids are humans too. That I have to ask myself, would I talk to another person this way, like a friend or someone at church? Would I ever speak to someone else like that? No, probably not. So what makes it okay to speak to my kids that way?
Yeah, that's good.
And so we have to be mindful of that, because yes, they're little kids. Yes, they, there's times that we can lose our composure. That's happened to me. And I apologize and I say that was wrong. That wasn't the way to respond. That was definitely a wrong response from Mom. And just remember that, they're growing, that they're developing, that I need to treat them with respect and with honor. They deserve that.
So yeah, something that a prior principal I had said that's been in my brain ever since he said it, is he said, how would you treat that student if they were 40 years old?
Yeah.
Would you, because I deal with high schoolers at school. So sometimes, you can joke around with them. They in your mind, they flip between like adult and kid, adult, a kid. By this time in the school year, they're mostly just kids in your brain. But you think, would I treat them this way if they were 40 years old? If they were an adult, just like I was?
It's really good.
It's a good question to ask yourself. Like you said, would I treat my children this way if they were someone else's kid?
Yeah.
Or if they were my favorite niece or my favorite nephew, or if they were my grandchild, or whatever my case might be. Would I treat them this way? And that's a healthy thing to ask, because we don't want to have two standards, right? We don't want to we don't want to have the home language at the kids and then a nice, sweet language when we leave the home. We want to have the same gentle personality anywhere we go. You can be an intense person and a motivated person, but still be super gentle. I love seeing that when there's like a huge, very, very muscular guy who's into bodybuilding and just ripped, and then he has like the sweetest, kindest demeanor towards children. That shows strength in so many different ways.
Right.
Where he doesn't feel like I need to intimidate everybody and I need to talk down to everybody. I just love seeing that. That's cool. Maybe someday I'll be there. I don't know. Okay. Last couple. Where are we at? Oh no, last one. Self-control. Take it away.
Self-control. This is something I have to ask the Lord for strength, because, you've mentioned before, when your child is asking you for seems like the 100th time to do something, or Mom, look, Mom, look, Mom, look, Mom, 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 Mom. I hear that all day, every day. And I have to remind myself that my kids are watching me and how I control myself. And if they're not seeing me control my temper, control my anger, how are they going to be able to control their temper, control their anger? And I know, especially for me, I can tell if I haven't been in the Word enough by the way I'm treating my kids, by the way I'm treating you, because, and I can just tell, because I'm not in the Spirit. I'm not connecting with God. And so that's what helps me a lot, is by just, okay, I need to even just read a couple of verses to remember who I am in Christ, and that I do have self-control, that I'm modeling this for my kids, and I want them to be healthy, especially emotionally, even spiritually. And so that's what I think of when I read about self-control, is that it's really important to show your kids and model for them how to respond, and how, yes, we can experience these emotions of anger and frustration, and it takes someone really that trusts in God to control those and not let them go into like rage.
Yeah. And just because you feel something doesn't mean you should act on it.
Right.
Everyone realizes that if they're honest with themselves. But just because you feel something doesn't mean you need to act on it, right? I tell it to people before, like, we have all had this feeling of, I really want to hurt that person, but you didn't do it. That's just an example of, just because you have a feeling doesn't make it right, doesn't mean that's what you should follow through. And the world's telling you the opposite. The world tells you, if you feel it, it's real, it's truth, it's who you are, you need to act on it. That's not the biblical way of living. The biblical way of living is realizing I have a flesh who wants to do wrong, who wants to sin, right, and I need to overcome the flesh with the Spirit by practicing the fruit of the Spirit. That's what this whole chapter in Galatians is about, overcoming the flesh with the Spirit, and choosing to live in the Spirit by using the fruit of the Spirit, by using these attributes of God to come out of us and to express them in our daily life. That's what living in the fruit of the Spirit, living in the Spirit is just living in the fruit of the Spirit. Walking in love is a big part of that, and that encompasses almost everything. But it's just you choosing every day, I'm not gonna act on how I feel. I'm gonna act on how I know I ought to act, according to the Word of God, like you were saying. That's perfect. One thing, I'm gonna take a different angle at it. One way we can model self-control is by being self-disciplined and modeling that for our kids. We talked a lot about technology. We talk about technology a lot on and off the podcast, but one way we can be a good role model for our kids is if we expect them to put limits on their use of technology. For instance, what kind of limits am I putting on? If I'm going to tell my teenager, I don't have a teenager, but if I did, if I'm going to tell my teenager, you're on your phone way too much, or you need to get off the TV, or you're on your computer way too much, and yet they see me on my phone or my computer just as much as they are, I'm setting a poor example of self-discipline for them. I'm setting a poor example for them that they're probably following. So one thing to do is ask yourself, am I expecting my kids to be more self-disciplined than I am? Or am I willing to set the example for them, right? Do I put my things away? We tell our kids, we have a really small house, but we tell them, put away one toy before you get out another toy or another bin of toys, right? Kind of close that box up and open up a new box to enjoy whatever's in there. Am I doing that myself? That's self-discipline. Do I put my things away on a daily basis? Am I organized? There's areas for me to grow in that for sure, that, I recognize the fact that I want to be a holistically good role model for them, not just by being a good person or having a good character, but showing good self-discipline, showing them that you can live an organized life. You can live a life that is well put together, and you work hard when it's time to work, so you can play hard when it's time to play. That's part of self-control as well, to do the hard things first so you can enjoy the freedom it provides, to where you don't have this to-do list hanging over your head, but you can say, it's time for relaxing because I did all my work. I did all my homework, or I put all my toys away. My shoes are put away. I can enjoy this now. I think we as parents have a lot of opportunities to model that for our kids, getting the work done first, and then we can play.
Yeah. I even think of like food.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's another example. Being
self-controlled in our food. We do try to watch how much sugar we allow our kids to eat, and we don't really eat a whole lot of sugar throughout our week, and try to just make healthy choices as best we can, and just talking about that with our kids too. Like, no, we can't have cookies for breakfast because I try to explain just even the health benefits with our kids about why we eat the things we do.
Yeah.
And it may not be fun, but I try to encourage them. Like, it's good to learn these things now, because when you get bigger and grow older, you'll have these habits in place, and that way you can stay healthy. Like, we want to take care of the body that God's given us.
Yeah.
So, they have to see that. I mean, we can't tell them, oh yeah, no more sweets for the day, and then we just enjoy like how many sweets we want at the end of the day. And honestly, I feel like you've been a good example for me, especially with your eating habits. Seriously, like you're able to control like how much sugar you eat.
Yeah, sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, majority of the time, and I think it's so good. And I have thought to myself, like, I'm so glad that they see this, that our kids see this, because I don't want them to have like a distorted view of food or of anything. But just to know, like, it's okay to enjoy things, it's okay to have fun, but also, it's good to have control.
Yeah, and wisdom.
It's good to know, to have wisdom and boundaries on the things that we eat, the things that we do, the things that we listen to. That these are all good things to have control over.
Yeah. Yeah, at my school, we have we've had different methods of phone. I don't know how to say this, but we've had different rules and different overarching systems and everything. We're at the point now where I just don't allow phones in my classroom to be used at all. If you want to get your phone out, you better ask me first, because otherwise you're getting in trouble. Like, a really, really strict phone policy. It's helped my students a lot. But having that standard for my students has heightened my awareness of, am I on my phone? And I'm very cognizant of the fact that if I pull out my phone, the kids are going to notice.
Oh yeah,
and I better have a good reason. It better be the principal texting me or my wife texting me or something. And but it's good. It's a good thing. I'm grateful for it, because I want that pressure. I want that pressure. Like, there are eyes on me, and so I need to make sure that I'm self-disciplined. Not because I want to impress anybody, but because I know it makes me better. It sharpens me. It's like running.
Discipline is good to have.
It's like running with a partner, right? You don't regret the fact that you're running with somebody. You enjoy that because you have a partner to push you further and to keep you accountable. And that's what we should be doing with our family. We should be encouraging one another, holding each other accountable, reminding each other of our goals and our way of choosing to live. And yeah, whether it's food or technology or, just taking care of your home, taking care of your car, taking care of all those things. I think there's areas, I'm thinking of many areas in my life right now that I could be better in to set a better example. But, choose your battles one at a time. You're growing as an individual as well, just like your children are. And understand that you can help them grow in their self-control as you model it for them. And you can make it a journey together. You can sit, it's okay, especially if your kids are older, it's okay to sit down with them and say, hey, Mom and Dad have been doing this for a while, and we kind of want to readjust this.
Right.
We want to look at this. We think that maybe we're doing things wrong in this area, so we're going to improve together. There's a great, I was talking to Melissa, we were talking together about this screenstrong.org lady, I forget her name, Hempy is her last name, Melanie Hempy, and she made a drastic change from one child to her next two children because she noticed there was something wrong. And I so respect that for her to sit down with her kids and say, hey, I know we've been doing this. You've been seeing this in the house for so many years, but really feel like we're going to change directions and we're going to rethink how we view this specific situation. For them, it was screens and how they were using them. And she has a great story about how that's helped her latter kids in life. But, for your family, it could be something else. It could be the way you eat. It could be how you spend money. It could be how you spend your time. And I don't know. There's all sorts of things that we can grow in. But it's fun. If you make it a family thing, then the kids know you're not just telling me to live my life differently, but you're willing to get into the trenches with them and lead by example.
Right. And I think it's also important to remember that as parents, we're changing every year. It's hard to sometimes see that. Like with kids, it's easy to see how quickly they're growing. But with parents, you have to be open to the fact that you're a different parent than you were last year.
Right.
You should always be striving to be developing more and more, but not get down on yourself if maybe you're not where you want to be. Mm-hmm. But just as long as you're continuing to pursue the Lord and say, I really am going to strive to walk in the fruits of the Spirit so that my kids can see that in a very real and tangible way, you're going to be doing a great service for your kids by really trying to develop yourself. And, I know for me, I'm definitely a different parent now mm-hmm. with our youngest than I was with our oldest.
Right.
I've learned a lot more. And so it's important just to keep growing and growing. Read the word mm-hmm. and pray, and the Lord will show you the different areas that you can work on. That's
excellent. We'll end on that point. And if you're a listener, you're doing this right now. You're listening to something that is hopefully helping you grow as a person and as a parent, as a married person. And we hope that it's encouraging you. We want to encourage you to reach out to your local church and your leaders there if you have a specific question that you want to address. If you have something going on in your home that you don't know what to do, find some godly counselors. Start at the local church level and then reach out from there. Maybe they can direct you to some family counselors or something if it's really severe. But otherwise, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep growing, keep learning, and keep understanding that you are changing. Like Melissa said, you are growing, and embrace that. Embrace the fact that you don't want to stay the same, right? You ought to be a better parent after the third kid than you were the first kid, because you've learned some things, you've mm-hmm. learned from your own mistakes, you learned from other people, and we want to be continuing to grow. So thank you again for listening. As a reminder, please do follow us or subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay up to date on our newest episodes, and share it with a friend if this was helpful for you. Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you.